call the meeting to order, 6:32. Nice to see everyone. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
How about this weather? Up first, we have our consent agenda with prior minutes from the December meeting, as well as a number of second read policies. Any discussion about the consent agenda? Good. All right, I'll make a motion then to accept. We'll do that by roll. Lisa?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Arlene?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Miranda?
Aye.
And Mary is an aye. Thank you. Lynn, any need to reprioritize the flow of the meeting?
No.
Okay,
I think we're
perfect. Courtney, no visitors in, Sharon, is she here to observe or for public comment?
Just observe.
Okay, nice to see you. And there's no one here. Okay, so no public comment then tonight, which brings us to Morgan with the financial and budget discussion. I'm ready.
So I did today receive the draft audit for NMV. Obviously, I haven't had a chance to look it over yet, other than the letter that goes to the board, and it's again another clean audit. So all is well there. Kudos to Franny and Sonia, and we will look over the details of it and give them any corrections that we find, and then bring that to you probably by your February meeting or March meeting for approval.
Okay, great.
So it's nice to have that finally back in our hands. The only other thing I have on the docket for you tonight is the budget discussion. We're going to go through the slideshow in a minute, and I sent out the drafts probably about an hour or two ago that are informing this presentation and this version of the budget. As I tipped in the email, I am going to recommend we don't approve a budget tonight, that we wait a week and a half, find another date to have maybe just a virtual meeting
Okay.
where we can do that. 20% of your budget goes to the Enosburg Richford District for tuition, and I don't have a strong handle on their tuition rate yet. They're going to be finalizing their budget in theory next Tuesday, and at that point we can set that rate. You've also still not received first semester tuition bills from the second and third largest schools that you send kids to, and I really would like to have those in hand as we make predictions on how many of those kids are returning next year, how many of those kids are going to have to pay tuition for it. But we will go through this. We are here on Wednesday, January 8th. Unlike what the slide says, and hopefully we don't finalize tonight. We have until I think January 28th when we could still get a warning into a paper of record if we warned that night. I don't think we need to wait that long.
Okay.
In terms of some of the other dates here, we are very close on the long-term weighted ADM. There's still some numbers that are in flux, so those numbers may change a little bit from what I'm presenting to you tonight. The numbers won't change much, but they do have a big impact on the tax rate. So another reason to push off coming up with a final decision. CLA numbers are now final, and they will be not changing from here on out. We will be electing a clerk and a moderator by ballot on town meeting day. The next one. We do need to schedule an official annual meeting sometime after February 22nd and before town meeting day. And so Lynn and I have locked a few days on our calendar. We will give you all first dibs and then go to ER, get an official date for them, and then we'll try to fill in some unofficial dates so that we can have one meeting in each town.
February 25th and the 27th.
So February 25th through 27th, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday would be the window where we want to hit the official one here. We are scheduled to hold that in Montgomery this year, kind of on a rotating schedule. But as I mentioned, we're going to we're recommending you have one in each of the 4 towns.
And Morgan, you want to get those, all 5 of those meetings settled tonight?
We want to get your official meeting settled tonight,
Okay.
because that's the one that has to go in the warning. The
Gotcha.
other ones we can add on the fly as we need to.
Okay,
And I'll talk about some different ideas for engaging the public in those meetings.
okay,
In mind.
all right.
So do folks, board members and principals have a preference between that Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday?
This is the 25th, 26th, or 27th?
February?
My preference would be Tuesday, the 25th. But I can also do Wednesday, the 26th.
I can do the 25th, but not the 26th.
Okay, so that's 25th, 25th. And
It's,
we don't need a quorum, so
You do not
if
need a
everyone can't make it, that's fine.
I'm sorry, it's February, 25,
Yes.
26, or 27?
The 25th,
25th, I'm available all 3 or whatever.
all right. No, Tuesday, the 25th is the kind of preference, I think.
I'm fine.
You're good?
Yep.
All right,
What time? We,
6?
6 or 7.
let's do, should we split the difference and do 6:30? I just want to be mindful for working folks, kind of getting home and the transition and dinner and kids and all the things.
You want 6:30? Is that what you?
Yeah, we do, or we could do 7, I just feel like 7 gets a little late. 6, let's do 6:30, and it'll be in Montgomery, eh?
So that'll be at your school, Sandy.
Okay, 25th?
Yes.
25th.
All right, at MES, great.
And that is, just for Michelle's sake, we rotate when the official meeting is. Every 4th year, someone hosts it. Different schools.
Let's see the next one. 3 school director seats open. Zach currently has the 3-year seat in Bakersfield. Michelle is filling in for the remaining 2 years of the 3-year term in Montgomery. And then Mary's 3-year seat is also up this year. So we have 3 seats up this year.
Morgan, any chance you have spare sheets here in the office? Because I would love to grab some signatures, we can do the
Absolutely.
same for Michelle.
I've got a set for Michelle, and I've got some spare
Okay, I
petitions.
forgot mine, so if I could have a spare to get some tonight, that would be great.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay.
The board goals, we've gone over in all your meetings, and we'll keep this in for any of the informational meetings we hold. Similar enrollment numbers, we'll talk about that with the public. Fleshed out a little more detail here. These numbers will change, but I give you at the beginning of the budget season what we think the big drivers are for increases in the budget. Obviously, as we've told you, we're in negotiations with both of your unions for next year. In this budget, salary and personnel costs are expected to go up over $800,000. And that's even with a slight reduction in overall FTE. So we have talked with the folks on the negotiation committee. We think we're in a reasonably good place in terms of having enough money if we really think those settlements are going to end. Part of the challenge that we've had across the state is that comps for settlements have been dramatically higher than they had been pre-COVID. And we are always in a place where we're playing catch up with our colleagues in Chittenden County. In terms of high school students, I ran the numbers today and we're down to 82 8th graders. So the high school tuition's down a little bit in this budget, but it's still a sizable difference between the 8th graders coming in and the seniors that we had budgeted last year who will be leaving. So that's still anticipated to be up over $500,000. And that's an area where, unless you are gonna make some drastic changes to how we operate vis-a-vis school choice, you don't really have any control over that chunk of the budget.
And Morgan, what about the piece of the truing up as well? Like,
So currently that is not in here. I
okay,
think we're gonna be able to cover that in the current year budget.
oh,
I will
okay,
know for sure once we get those last 2 tuition bills in.
okay,
And at this point, I know how many kids are in those schools with reasonable accuracy.
yeah,
What I don't know is how many of the last year's 10th graders who are now in 11th grade, how many of them have gone to tech centers?
right,
Because we don't have to pay tuition in the current year for them. And so if a lot of them have gone into tech centers, we will be under budget in terms of tuition. And if none of them are going to tech center, then we'll likely be over. So
okay,
that's kind of the last piece that I'm going to fall into
Gotcha.
place.
okay,
And then finally, health insurance premiums going up. Again, we're anticipating this is going to be about $250,000. Jamie has been very good about keeping me informed as people are changing their insurance. So, you know, folks have been going through open enrollment last month. We've made a lot of changes to this budget from what you saw in December. And she's also been going through the list and saying, okay, this person I know is on their parents' plan and they're gonna turn 26 at some point in the next year. And so we are likely gonna get them. And so we've tried to build that in as well.
She also is well poised to know who is having babies and getting married and attend to all of those details as
Yeah.
well.
In a non-creepy sort of way, I assure you.
She's always the first to know in those situations. Well, maybe not the first year.
PCB remediation is still an unknown. We've not budgeted anything specific for PCBs in this budget, but bringing over from last year, we are now budgeting for each of the schools a chunk of money for some of those bigger projects. So we could leverage that for anything that we need to do in Berkshire or Sheldon. Overall staffing changes, a very small fraction of a teacher down in terms of FTE, and then across all 4 towns, an overall reduction of 5 paraeducators. Some of that is folks moving to the SU budget, becoming BTs, those higher trained kids, paras who are with kids one-on-one. But in terms of your budget, that's the delta for staff.
Small increase in teacher, right?
Small increase in teacher, significant decrease in paras. The next 4 slides, we kind of go through the details school by school. We can share the slide deck with you. There have been no changes from the last budget presentation. 2 paras down in Bakersfield, in Berkshire, reduction of a paraeducator and increase of 0.6 of an enrichment teacher. That's actually a staff member you have now who's 0.4 teacher, 0.6 paraeducator. So we're just trying to bring them all onto a 100% teacher contract. It benefits them for things like retirement. In Montgomery, reduction of a paraeducator and moving the 1-day-a-week family engagement coordinator out of Montgomery and into Sheldon. Next slide. Where there's the increase in that family engagement coordinator time. Same person, same budget, just changing schools. And then in Sheldon, reduction of a reduction of a full-time paraeducator, removing the unfilled health teacher position out of the budget, and increasing the teacher budget by a half-time music teacher. So again, overall, across all 4 schools, fractional change to teacher, and then a decrease in terms of your paraeducators.
wait, can you go back, and can you go back one more to Montgomery? So why are we no longer gonna have a family engagement coordinator in Montgomery?
So with the smaller school size in Montgomery, they have a full-time school counselor.
Right,
So the thinking was that she could take on some of those responsibilities
Okay.
of the family engagement. Correct, Sandy?
Yes.
okay, perfect, that makes sense. And then looking at the Sheldon one, I wanted to have a little bit of a conversation around that music. And I wanted to push back just a little on the additional 0.5 and wonder whether we might instead look toward, I was incredibly inspired by the STEM spotlight at the December meeting. And so I am wondering whether we might instead be able to look at what it would look like, what it would cost to find a STEM 1.0 position that could be shared by the remaining 3 schools between Bakersfield, Berkshire, and Montgomery. I'm not fully understanding the necessity to go, because now we already have a full-time music situation in Sheldon. So, and I understand that even with that full-time music situation, there are still some gaps, but it is a pretty robust music program. And so my wonder is, could we potentially just punt that 0.5 until maybe next year and next budget cycle, and instead look to possibly hire a 1.0 STEM person for the other 3 schools. I feel as though, I mean, that it's really kind of amazing what you all have already done in a very short amount of time with that additional STEM program. And it seems so invaluable in this kind of day and age, and it also seems to dovetail really beautifully with what we're trying to do around our portrait of a learner, our kind of trying to up-level our students in these arenas of science and technology and mathematics. And I feel as though it is inequitable to not offer that opportunity to the students at the other 3 schools. So I'd love to kind of see what, and I know these are really tough budget times, and so we do have to be really thoughtful about what we're adding, what we're pulling out of budgets and stuff. If we were to add anything at this moment, that's what I would prefer to see happen. I'd love to have a conversation around that.
Can I respond? Yeah, and we are flexible and willing to bring it again next year. The reason we did it is because there's been a request from the community to have more vocal in the 5th through 8th grade, which we don't have because our teacher teaching 300 students isn't able to accommodate both the instrumental and the vocal program. Yeah. And we do have middle schoolers who still like vocal, but not all of them do. So that would be where the halftime would help with some of the general music, but also the vocals. But to be perfectly honest, it is something that is a desire and is a want. We were still trying to figure out space in our building to accommodate offering it.
Right.
But we figured if we got it, we'd find the space.
Right.
So waiting another year so we can be more intentional in our planning and giving the other 3 schools a STEM program, I'm happy to acquiesce to that because I value STEM a lot, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't push for it last year. So
I think it makes perfect sense. We had that opportunity with the ESSER funding that expired this fall to make pretty significant investments in all of our schools in terms of them having access to the right tools to use with kids, and a lot of really wonderful things are happening in all 4 schools, and seeing the little bit extra that they're able to do, really a lot extra that they're able to do with in Sheldon by having that STEAM teacher, it makes perfect sense, I think, to shift the budget priority to have someone that could push in and help to really, get things off the ground in some of the other schools to really support that. And the idea, I would hope, would be that the person could help to build the skills with the classroom teachers so that they see that as an opportunity to integrate STEAM into planning their units as they're thinking about their teaching, and really support that, because upping that engagement is so important for our learners and building those skills.
Totally. And it's never, it's all wonderful work, and it's all really valuable, and I value the arts incredibly. And so that's not to diminish the value of that extra music time we just have to be kind of thoughtful. I think we can do it all, we just can't do it all at
This year.
once.
Yeah.
And so if we can pace ourselves a little bit better, more slowly over time, hopefully we'll kind of get there with being able to offer all of it to everyone.
I'm not gonna give up, but I'm perfectly
Yeah.
fine to put it on the back burner for a year if that means other schools get some STEM, because I think that's vital for our future, for our students.
Right, and I like what you're talking about too, because then that person would be able to, because they would be, splitting their time between the 3 schools. So while they can also help kind of engage our teachers at the schools to kind of take over
Build
some of
capacity.
that.
You said Julie, no,
Um,
I think something else.
No, I'll
She's
take,
mine.
no, I'll take her.
Julie's mine.
No fighting over Julie. She's fantastic. We
She
support her.
would be
We
happy
would.
to help train whoever
Yeah.
comes in to do this because she's been working on new projects and getting excited.
Yes.
She's very invested in
And
children.
she'll be great in Bakersfield.
No, she would, but you know what?
So what
So
do you think,
thought-
Morgan?
Thoughts from other board folks about maybe trying to prioritize increasing the STEAM opportunities for the 3 remaining schools in
I
this
agree.
budget cycle?
I agree with that.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely.
All right, sweet, okay, well, that sounds great, and so Morgan, maybe maybe it's good that we're not finalizing budget tonight, so when you come back, once you have those high school tuition numbers and could work through numbers of what it would look like then for a 1.0 that would be shared for STEAM across the 3 schools, and I don't suspect that moves the budget into unmanageable territory.
No, it will go up, but it will probably go up about a tuition kid
Right,
worth. It's,
yeah,
and
okay,
we don't know who's out there to hire, so, I'm making some assumptions on where they're gonna land on the schedule. And
right. I mean, and hopefully we'll be able to find a person who's amenable to moving around between the schools, like that, so,
You could also do it in a school each trimester if it's between 3 schools, because Julie, we
Yeah.
were even talking, it's better to be consecutive days than rotation.
right.
We've learned that this year.
Yeah, so that could work too. Okay, excellent. All right, thank you.
How many other personnel questions before we move on?
I don't think so.
This is the article. These numbers are obviously going to change. Overall, they'll hopefully go down. But the budget draft that you have in your inbox is 23.8 million. Per pupil education spending would be 11.5, and it would be an 8.75% increase in terms of per pupil ed spending. And so that's the language that's coming back. That is, right now has all of Lynn's colleagues in a bit of a panic as they're getting to the point where they're finalizing their budgets. At 11.5, I can say with a lot of confidence that we will still be down in the basement in terms of per pupil spending compared to the rest of the state. These charts really aren't going to change much. This one showing that about half of your budget is spent on people. Most of the other half is spent on purchased services, and most of that is tuition going to other districts. When we talk about things like supplies or the debt up there in red, they're really very small fractions of what we're discussing tonight. And then similarly, what we do, almost 3/4 of the budget is direct instruction, so that's really people in front of kids. Student support would be things like nurses, guidance counselors. Instructional support would be things like technology, librarians, professional development, school administration, central services. That 10% is central office. It's primarily food service and transportation and special ed. Operations and maintenance is maintaining your buildings. And again, that red sliver is debt service on your 4 buildings. Homestead tax rates are in your packets. This first part of the chart goes through the calculation of how we get to a district-wide tax rate. So that first number in the proposed budget column, the 23.8 million, is the number that you will eventually approve and that we will ask the voters for authority to spend. That second number, 89,000, is what we anticipate to get in terms of local revenue. That's primarily a grant you get to help support English language learners, as well as things like the interest that we make on the bank accounts, any tuition dollars we anticipate getting for pre-K kids who come to our program from other districts. The use of prior year fund balance at 51,000 is half of what we had left over at the end of FY24. By default, that goes back to the voters and goes back to this budget and buys down your tax rate. Historically, we have asked for them to give us authority to take half of that and put it in a capital reserve fund. It's a relatively small amount this year, so it's not going to move the needle much. But unlike other years, this is a year where I would not fight back very hard if you decide to put it all towards buying down the tax rate. The reasons for that, one is that it's not a big amount that would be going into the capital reserve fund. Second, we're all anticipating some pretty seismic changes in terms of how we fund education coming next year. So normally we try to keep something in there to keep the tax rate relatively stable from year to year. We don't know where the legislature is going to go, and we don't even know what committee assignments are out there yet. But I don't think another $50,000 is really going to mean much if the legislature makes a move next year and we have a radically different way of funding education. So that's one area where we can have a discussion around using more of that to lower tax rates. When we take those two numbers out of the proposed budget, we get a figure of $23.7 million. That's what's called the education spending, or what we need to go to the state and tell them our budget's approved, this is what you have to send us out of the ed fund. That's the chunk of money that's made up of homestead taxes, non-homestead taxes, and then those non-property tax revenues, primarily sales tax, rooms and meals tax, and a few other small streams. The long-term weighted ADM number, that 2061, is the weighted count of kids in our district. So we count all the kids, and then we get extra weight for those kids that the state has determined cost more to educate. So we count high school kids more, we count kids living in poverty more, we count kids who are English language learners more. Again, that number is not final. It may drift up or it may drift down from where we are now, but we should, hopefully we'll have that by the end of the week. At least have it pretty closely dialed in. The ed spending divided by the number of kids is what how we get to the per pupil ed spending amount, that 11,500, and that's the first number that goes on your warning. The dollar yield of 85.53 is a number that's ultimately set by the legislature. This is the number that was proposed by the tax commissioner on December 1st. I don't think we're going to have a defensible number other than this by the time you need to warn your budget. So back when we had normal years, we would go with this number to the voters. In the last few years, there's been so much movement that you might have one of the committees in the legislature floating a number in mid-January, and then we kind of scramble as individual districts to decide which number we want to use. At this point, I think almost everyone is using the 85.53, and I would certainly not recommend that we stray from that. And that gets us to our district-wide tax rate of $1.3466, and that's the rate that is used before we take into account the CLA. On the next slide, and I'm going to apologize to Michelle since this is her first meeting and first time hearing this. If you want a deeper dive at any time, I'm happy to
Yeah,
to do that
I
by
watched
phone.
Lola's video.
Oh, good.
That kind of skims the surface.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Catch up.
It's definitely good foundation though,
Mhm.
to understand that.
Yeah, it's one of the best,
Yeah.
best tools out there. And so if we start applying CLAs to that local, the residential school tax rate, you'll see that in Bakersfield and in Sheldon, if this budget is passed and all of these assumptions hold true, they are actually seeing a tax rate decrease year over year, FY '25 to FY '26. Berkshire and Montgomery would both see an increase in their tax rate. The reason for this difference is how each town's CLA is moving relative to the statewide average. So what this tells me is Montgomery with the highest increase and Berkshire with the second highest increase, property values in those towns are going up much faster than they are in Bakersfield and in Sheldon. We don't get to really see behind the curtain and how the tax rate determines those, but they are looking at tax sales over the last 3 years and then comparing that to the town's grand lists to come up with those figures. So I don't doubt the numbers, I just can't explain them other than the big picture of property values are increasing much quicker in Montgomery and Berkshire than they are in Bakersfield and Sheldon, at least over the last year.
And it's part of the problem because it's been so long since Montgomery, I can't speak for Berkshire, but I assume it's the same, has done a reappraisal.
Yes.
Because it's been now over a decade since the
Yeah.
towns did a reappraisal.
Correct. So you'll see those towns that are closer to 100% on their CLA are faring better in terms of their ending tax rate. So when Montgomery does reappraise, and I believe they're starting the process this year or next year, they've got a contract in place, is my understanding. Montgomery will likely move up to a CLA of 100%, or they may go higher than that, as we saw on the other side in Richford, where they got up to 130%. It makes their tax rate look great, but your property value has also gone from
Right.
100 to 150 or 200 to 250, whatever the change is. So it makes you all look better. It doesn't necessarily ease the pain
For the first year,
for the first year.
until that CLA readjusts with
Yeah.
the new
Right.
data the following year. And because what we saw in Richford was it was so high in that year of reappraisal that it tanked the tax rate so low. So then when it started to right size and come back down closer, it was at like 108, I think. And when it did that, it looked like a sharp spike, but it was still a spike from a very low number. And that was hard to communicate about.
And the reappraisals do make things a lot fairer. So like you and I, maybe 20 years ago, both of our houses were assessed at, say, $150,000. Married to a retired social worker, you're married to a contractor. Your value's probably gone up a lot more than mine is in terms of the house. So those things they won't change the same for everyone.
Right. And is it possible that this CLA component is gonna be part of what you are saying could be some pretty seismic shifts at the state level if they're looking to try to unburden some of the weight off of funding schools off of property taxes?
I think what we are more likely to see is that they will look at ways to split up the non-residential grand list. So right now, it's like everything that's not a household is in one bucket. And there seems to be some appetite for saying, we want to treat second homes differently than we are going to treat businesses or rental properties. Because I think the legislature thinks that there's value in taxing some of those more than others.
Yeah.
There's some commercial uses that we want to encourage and some that we don't. So I think that will be more of a change, and that will give them a few more levers when they're setting tax rates, so that they may have more opportunity to pull things off of non-residential rates generally if they choose to. But I think what's more likely is that the change will be moving from a tax system where the tax rates are driven by local votes that happen in each district to coming up with a scheme where there is a floor and there's a certain amount of money that you get to spend in your district, no matter what is going on in terms of the votes.
Yeah.
There's probably also going to be changes to the excess spending penalty, which has never impacted us, but in theory it double taxes people when they spend over a certain amount per pupil. And so if that's tweaked, it may discourage some spending in the districts that are at $18,000-$19,000 per kid rather than $11,500.
So some of that money comes from, gets moved down then from the top to
Right.
where we are in the basement.
Right.
And if we decided as a board to use some of the prior year fund balance, even more than you have allocated at the moment, that would obviously not just move the needle for the tax rate on Berkshire and Montgomery, because that would get equitably distributed across. So then the other two towns will see even more kind of improvement, but it might ease things a bit for the Berkshire and taxpayers in Berkshire and Montgomery.
Yeah, all towns would go down proportionally, or up
Okay.
proportionally as you change either the expense side or the revenue side of the budget.
Okay,
Yes. And then this is the tax rate chart. Again, you'll see the lines in red and green are Bakersfield and Sheldon, those tax rates dropping. The ones in gray and blue, Berkshire and Montgomery, those going up. And again, it's the same district tax rate, but when you apply the CLAs, the impact is different.
Can you go back one? I think it's important to state this, the difference in how the district tax rate is calculated. It looks like there's a sharp increase this year, and there was a change that I know I cannot describe effectively, and I'm hoping Morgan can. I just want to keep reminding people, because I think this is something that is going to stand out to the public, because we have over the years emphasized where our district tax rate was, and there's a change in the formula about where that comes into play. So can you just share that part
Yeah.
one more time?
So the change is in how we, as a state, calculate the CLAs and apply those to property taxes. So in the past, every district got a CLA. There was a statewide CLA, but nobody paid attention to it. So maybe across the state CLA was 80% out of 100. So they knew that all of the grand lists, or most of the grand lists across the state were low. But as individual districts, we would have a CLA of 80% or 70% or 60%, wherever that was. What they've done is they've basically re-indexed it. So they're assuming now that the state CLA is okay at 100%. And so if the state CLA moves up from 80 to 100%, your town CLA is maybe going up from 75% to 95%. So it's pushing everybody's CLA up. That's kind of the simplest way that I can explain it, and I know that that's insufficient. And so when we do this presentation to your town, we may decide to just get rid of that district rate line. But basically, the short story is that in the past, we've been able to say, you know, we got the yield number in December, everything went great, CLA number came in, oh my God, everything's bad now, and we point to the CLA as the bogeyman for why budgets are going up. The legislature wanted to take that away from us, so now the yield is much lower than it has been in the past, and CLAs are higher. If everything else stayed the same, the tax rates would be exactly the same. It's just kind of a math game, but it's shifting some of the blame away from the CLA and on district decisions and voter decisions. But I really struggle with what's the value add in trying to explain that to folks.
I know, I mean, I think this is one of the most difficult pieces. I feel like I've been trying to fully grasp this for 15 years. So I just wonder, like, is it more harmful than helpful because it muddies the water? Yeah, so I don't know about the value of including this, because every year this seems to be kind of a thorny piece that is very hard to communicate to voters.
Right.
And I think it is it's misleading because the black line it's not
Right.
apples to apples, because it's apples all the way until FY '25. You can compare those because the way it's calculated is the same, and then the shift happens in '26. And without, like, no one is gonna understand what Morgan just described as
Exactly.
the why. So it might make sense to just pull that off and just have it be more focused on what's happening with each town's.
Right,
And ultimately, it's nothing that's in our control.
right,
We control what that $23 million number is. And so if you're gonna get torqued up about that and wanna do something about it, it's having the discussions around staffing.
Right.
Or having discussions, are you gonna designate a high school and so drive down your tuition rates?
right.
Those are the things where you can have an impact.
Yeah, yeah, so the value of kind of trying to kind of continue to explain this component is little. There's not much value.
So the next slide, again, you are all aware of the two blue lines at the bottom representing our two districts. I don't anticipate that our pole position is going to change going into FY '26. Obviously, we won't know that until those budgets are passed. These are the numbers for the year that we're living in right now. I would say that the hope is with some of the changes that the legislature might consider, that we'll see less of a spread. So this is tax rates, this isn't ed spending, but you can see some towns are spending almost twice as much, or being taxed twice as much as others. And that taxing capacity is directly correlates to how much money they can spend on their kids. No problem. So the next article is the reserve fund article. So this is something we can really decide as we are finalizing the warning. Again, as we would normally do, we would ask for half of that to go into the capital reserve fund. I think it's not bad to be asking them every year. This has never been a controversial issue. But if you feel like you need to drive that full amount into the budget to try to get a budget passed on round one, we can certainly do that. It is nice to leave it there if we have a round two that you can, that's an easy give back to reduce taxes
Right,
Mm-hmm.
without making any spending cuts or without making as deep a spending cut. But ideally, we get this done in one vote.
right. And Morgan, we had talked at one point about starting a separate reserve fund to help buffer high school tuition, right?
And so I have an article here. This is lawyer approved. This would not, at this point, would not be asking for any funding. It would just be to establish it. And then once it's established,
Yeah.
we can talk about whether it's asking each year as part of that leftover money, do we want to push some money into this? Or if we do end up with some sort of more traditional way of funding education in terms of what the other 40, however many states do it differently, how they do it, we may be in a position where we're looking at a budget and saying, we know we have this much to spend, we know we have a relatively small 8th grade class going in, let's make a line item and put some money into a tuition reserve so that we have that money when we need it when that 5th grade class, that public class goes up through. So again, not asking for money, but at this point I would recommend that you include it on there just so we have it and can decide how to fund it in
Right.
the future.
Yeah, I think it's a wise idea. And Morgan, if you go back to Article 5 around the surplus for the capital reserve fund, can you remind us what we have currently in the capital reserve fund? And do we have any like big ticket, I was thinking specifically buildings and infrastructure needs? I mean, PCB remediation notwithstanding, I mean, we know that's looming. I remember Vern mentioned something about the boiler at Berkshire.
Sheldon and Berkshire.
Vern can spend a lot of money if you wanted to. There's a lot of deferred maintenance that he's.
Yeah,
So right now we have 682,000 in capital reserves at the end of FY '24. So.
and that's
as
for,
of
that's the
July.
NMV capital reserve, not the individual school.
So 530-ish of that is NMV and 150-ish of that is specific to Berkshire. We do have a project to replace the boilers in Berkshire that we're gonna be bidding out soon. It's gonna be a big price tag. We have received some grant money. Vern's gotten about $250,000 so far, I think,
Nice.
to help offset that. Probably won't quite cover half, but it'll be close. And he's pursuing some additional money from Efficiency Vermont, which will also help chip into
Okay.
that. So I anticipate we'll use the Berkshire Reserve to offset that.
And so that'll zero that
It's
out.
likely that we'll zero that out.
Yeah.
We'll see, we'll get the bids before we start the summer construction season. If we're in a place in April, May where we've paid those old tuition bills and we're still in a good place in terms of where we think we're gonna end the year, we might try to speed some of the purchasing of the stuff for that project up and get it into this year's general fund. And that's
Yeah.
something that we kind of play with at the end of every year anyway. But that's the only way I could see where we would get through next year with Berkshire having money left over.
Okay.
I know Gavin's bringing a small ask for the capital reserve fund tonight to whittle that down. And if we do get to a point where we've got some capital needs related to PCB remediation, and if we still are in a place where the state is not supporting that, that's another place where we might take some money out of the Berkshire capital reserve. So,
Okay. But so overall, we have 682, and that is, part of that is, that 150K is embedded in that
Right.
number.
and so in terms of those big projects, I think the real pressing needs are the Berkshire boilers and the Sheldon boilers. We're gonna need to deal with those this summer. I doubt we will have as much luck with grant funding there, for various reasons, but Vern and Heather are good about chasing those things down. After that, we've got kind of the normal wear and tear. There's always a building that needs paving. We've got certainly energy efficiency stuff that we could do in all the buildings. We know as schools are used more of the year round, and as days that we go to school get warmer, we're needing to come up with ways to move cool air into different parts of the buildings. We've done some of that under ESSER and during COVID, but I would anticipate that those are gonna keep cropping up.
But so with the largest, the large expenses that we have on the horizon that are kind of already in our view shed, we're well positioned to at least cover them, so it speaks to possibly being able to put less into the capital reserve and buy down the tax rate a little bit more if we wanted to. We wouldn't be jeopardizing our ability to fund these larger boiler projects. Even if we have to do both of them, it still sounds like
Right.
we would be well positioned with what we have.
Right.
That'd be about 103, Morgan. This would be 103, how much is it, depending on the tax rate in this budget?
So it's about $175,000 of spending, moves the budget a penny. So another 50,000 is about not quite a third of a penny.
Yeah, okay. So it doesn't move the needle a lot.
No. Right now,
It's
unless
still
there are gonna be pretty drastic staffing reductions, the thing that's gonna move the needle is if we get some good news in terms of high school tuition.
Right,
Nobody has announced a tuition rate yet for next year,
yeah,
so I'm kind of using a guesstimate. What we're
okay,
being charged this year, plus a little bit of an inflation.
yeah,
If Maple Run or if Enosburg's rates come in lower, that's where most of your kids go.
right,
I'll be able to drop these rates.
okay. All right, sounds good, thanks, Morgan.
Yep. And then that's it. I will plan to bring another version back to you. We should, under board business, set a time and a date for that meeting. And I would just ask that it not be before the Enosburg meeting on Tuesday.
Okay, and you think that's something we could do by Zoom?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect,
We'll make it an official in-person meeting and have, we'll be here for it.
Sure.
I think everybody could teleport in by Zoom, all the board members.
okay, okay, great. Okay, thanks, Morgan, appreciate it. All right, so that brings us to Lynn.
So we'll start us off with personnel, and for the first month in a while, I don't have anything that I need you to approve. So that even though there is a name on there in bold, that was actually a contract, a broken contract, leaving prior to the end of the year, so you don't need to approve that resignation. You have some open positions still available in our schools, and one I think we're really close to filling, but for right now, we have a pre-K para at Bakersfield, and I'm hoping that we are close to having an elementary classroom teacher position open there to deal with the resignation above. In Berkshire, they have the halftime help teacher in para position still open. Sheldon is still looking for a middle school math interventionist, and I think Gavin's close on something. We've got to review some staffing data, and then we'll get closer on that. For students, I thought maybe the principals could take a look at those pictures and just say something about what we're seeing there. Let's start at the top left and go clockwise.
Top left, those are my friends. They are involved in the STEM. They're building little cars that move, the engineering, and they're having a great time with it and learning along the way.
Tell by their faces.
I believe in the top right, if we're going clockwise, I believe what you are seeing was from our most recent PBIS celebration in December. And you see a group of very happy students decorating Christmas cookies. This was done on the last day before winter break. This was part of a whole school celebration through Earned Rewards. And there was lots and lots of frosting, and I think there will be, I apologize in advance for the frosting and sprinkle shortage that you guys are probably facing from Berkshire. You went to Hannaford to decorate cookies. We bought out the stuff.
You bought it all.
I know Sandy's bottom left, so I must be bottom right. I can't see the picture very well, so give me a second. My vision's.
Put to take a nap.
Oh, this is one of the classroom celebrations. Oh, one of our PBIS celebrations. Our kids have been, we are so successful with our PBIS system. We've actually been weaning off Vermont PBIS coming in to every single one of our meetings now. They don't think they need to be there. This is one of our classes who, one of our new teachers, they did a movie party. They got 20 minutes to view a movie, and they got to bring pillows and stuffies and all that for the comfort. And it looks like it's fifth grade, one of our fifth grade celebrations. So, yeah, so it's kind of one of our victories right before break. So.
Awesome.
And ours is a photo of our PE teacher, that's Lish Richard Douglas, utilizing our brand new archery equipment that we got for free through the National Archeries at Schools program.
That's awesome. Lynn, do you maybe want to give an explanation of the acronym PBIS?
Yes. So positive behavior intervention system. So several of our schools, well, actually not several, Bakersfield and not Bakersfield anymore.
Are you good?
No, he's not.
No, you're not.
Sheldon, there's the second one. Why am I drawing a blank? Let's talk about
Yes.
Sheldon. Sheldon,
Yeah, it's them.
are you formal PBS
Oh,
with
we're
the
not,
state?
we're not formal,
Right.
we've been in the process of trying.
So it's really about creating systems that reinforce positive behaviors with students. So setting a goal and saying, this is what we're working towards, and then reinforcing it when you see that kind of behavior and
Instead of the negatives.
what?
Instead of focusing on the negative
Right.
behaviors, we focus on the positives for reinforcement.
I think even my daughter does it at elementary school, at
Yeah.
Montgomery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of the strategies are utilized.
Yeah.
Sheldon is just a school that is formal. It's Bakersfield.
Is it?
We were.
Okay.
We didn't attend this year.
It was.
Last spring, we were recognized as one of the top schools, and we're at, they rank you every year, but we have our visit coming in 2 weeks, I think, at our school.
Mhm.
And last year, we went from something like 60-some% in their rubric to 88%. So we're hoping to be even higher this year.
That's great.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it's really working well.
So, given some of the things that we've been telling you about this fall with the uneven landscape when it comes to education funding, whether it's what's going to happen with our Vermont education funding system or what's going to happen on the national landscape in terms of federal funding for education through our Consolidated Federal Grant Program, I'm going to ask the board to consider granting me the authority to notify the union of potential for a reduction in force. I think that in order to protect the district, I think it is necessary because there's just so much uncertainty. So we'll be going into the spring and we need the union to know that that's a possibility. So I would send that letter out after we have the third board meeting of this month, if the board wishes that I go in that direction. So we'll be looking for a motion if the board supports that decision.
Yeah, I think it's important that we have that tool in our toolbox, given the landscape at the moment. So, any more discussion on that from board folks? So I'll make that motion to, for the contemplation of reduction in force. Do that by roll. Lisa,
Aye.
Miranda, John,
Aye.
Arlene, Michelle, and Mary is an aye.
So at the start of this meeting, I sent the slideshow to each of the board members, and I should have sent it to principals. I'll do that after. So there is a lot going on related to education funding in Vermont, and I'm going to, over the course of the rest of the meetings that we have this year, try to bring these 4 categories, something from each of these. So the Commission on the Future of Public Education is something that we have talked about for a while. That was a commission that was established during last year's legislative session, and they were tasked with looking at public education in Vermont and making recommendations this past December 15th, short-term solutions to the dilemma that we're facing in the education system, and then longer-term solutions. They did a preliminary report of findings that I have attached there for you to take a look at. They were really kind of a list of things that they would recommend. And their big task now, as they move forward, is to think about what's their final report going to say at the end of 2025. So next December, there should be a much more substantial report that is woven in there. And if you click into the preliminary findings report, you can see that they set the context for what's happened in the state of Vermont, and then they had worked to establish guiding principles, and they identified Vermont's current, as I said, the current context, and then talked a little bit about their data, what they found within what they are calling Vermont's education ecosystem, and the data that they're referencing came out of, we'll talk a little bit about it, from the Agency of Education's data reports. So some of the recommendations that are outlined in this have to do with the data that they received and things that they've learned about other ways to fund education. So you can dig into that. I would expect that we would see something much more substantial next December. One thing that is linked in that report, and I think that we've told you about that before, is this subcommittee brainstorm, and that's really where the detail comes in this release. And that is where they really looked at what are the ideas to reduce cost drivers, and then they were looking at like what's the earliest effect date, and then what would be the fiscal impact and the policy goal. So whether it's an equity goal or it's to contain costs, they've considered all of those. So I look at that as really where they put all the ideas of what they had talked about, and several were related to how we pay tuition for some of our choice towns, and that's related to districts like ours. A lot of the other recommendations were related to school and or district size, student and staffing ratios, healthcare costs, student needs, state support of schools and facilities. So those are the broad big categories. With there's another category on ideas to reduce property taxes. So if you want to take a moment to look in that, there are two other categories: adjusting the funding formula and adjusting the structure for the education fund. So it is, when you think about a spreadsheet, it's 129 rows deep, so there's a lot of information in there. So that's what's come out of the commission. In terms of the legislative update, the governor released on January 3rd a letter to the legislators, and within the letter he is indicating that he's asking for more work to happen at the legislative level to get education spending growth in property taxes at a sustainable level, is in his first line. So he has tipped that he's going to present a comprehensive education proposal alongside his FY26 budget address at the end of January. So what he's also tipped in this letter is that he has a pretty clear strategic plan for releasing data to the legislators, and he has several members of his cabinet and their partners presenting in the legislature. So you have access to that in the link. You can see tomorrow he's going to be giving his inaugural address, which he's going to talk about for the first time some of the current challenges and opportunities that he sees, but I don't think we'll see the whole picture yet for what his intended plan is. It looks to me like he is intending to set the stage for legislators so that they have all the background knowledge that they need, so that when they get into the legislative session, he wants them to have all of this background knowledge before he does his State of the State address on January 28th, so his budget address. So what I saw from looking through this is that his hope is that these are committees that come in, and he's hoping that this background could be built in both the House and Senate side in education, both of the Senate and House Education Committees, and also Senate Finance and House Ways and Means. There may be some other committees in there. We still don't know legislatively. Lisa's on, maybe she knows, but we don't know yet who's assigned to what committee, so we don't know who are the people that are in the education and the education funding committees. Is that something that's released yet, Lisa?
Yes, so House Education is the same chair, Chair Conlon. Vice Chair is Chris Taylor of Milton. I have the full committee list. Senate has not decided on their committee members yet until tomorrow.
Okay.
So I can send that to you if you'd like.
I would love that.
But you have the House side anyway.
What's the Ways and Means for House?
And it's actually on the House website now, I'm looking.
Okay,
So it
perfect.
is up there.
So Morgan can get it to you, yeah. Chair Kornheiser is remaining on Ways and Means, and her vice chair is Bill Canfield of Fairhaven.
Okay. Thank you, Lisa. So we're going to have our eyes squarely on the legislative session. There's a lot of moving parts, and this is the time of the year where our work shifts a little at this level. Obviously, we're going to be in high gear in terms of budget, but it also requires us to really pay attention to what's happening legislatively as well. So we will be watching there. There are, the way I see it, is 3 major data points that the agency is likely going to be presenting to the legislators, and that's pretty well outlined in the governor's letter that he sent to the legislature. I've linked them all there, and the only one that you haven't seen before is the key themes from the AOE Listen and Learn Tour, and that was released earlier today. It's 148 pages. I have not read all of the pages, I will admit, it was a busy day. But the way that this is outlined is it's really about giving a little bit of a high-level overview of what the agency learned during their Listen and Learn tours with educators, community members, and students. I was a little surprised by its layout because we hosted a regional session, and I didn't think it was going to be divided in an identifiable way, which it is fine. It is divided in an identifiable way. So you're able to go in and you're able to get like educator and community, and then you also can get the regional work that happened with leaders from all across the Champlain Valley. You can get data from that. So you can go through, and they have broken it down. They talk about this really being in raw form. They haven't tried to synthesize anything, so all of that information is in there for you to look at. That's something that they'll be focusing on with the legislators. They also will, I'm sure, be asking legislators to get very familiar with the Vermont State Education Profile. And that Vermont Education Profile is a place where they spend a lot of time digging into data and really trying to compare Vermont systems within Vermont and Vermont to systems outside of Vermont. And they're looking at all sorts of things there, from school size, class size, optimum district size, outcome data. There are a lot of factors that they're looking at. They're also looking at efficiencies, they're looking at cost per pupil, they're looking at special education, poverty, all of those things. Vermont's education funding system was another document that was released back in November, and I shared that with you, I believe, at the December meeting, and that's explaining our ed funding system and then comparing it to other states. Sorry, I have a typo there. So that would be a good one, Michelle, for you to look at as well, where it really gives you some good insights into, you know, what does it look like?
I started reading that. Yeah.
Okay. It's complicated, and that's something you'll see throughout, is that the way we fund education in Vermont is really not easy to understand, and it is even harder to explain.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I think that because it's so hard, sometimes there's a little mistrust that comes because people can't imagine that it could really be that complicated to try to communicate about, and it is truly that complicated. So I'll keep giving you information about that. We're continuing to work on our budget planning. We have been working hard, the principals have been working hard, writing their annual reports. Our leadership team here at central office has been working hard. We're trying to be more concise with the annual report. Last year, we got feedback that there was too much information, and there were too many words that were education specific words that the public really couldn't understand. So we're trying very hard to make it less complex, more concise, and very focused. What we're going to do for the school level reports is we're going to call out portions from each school level report on their pages, but then link in. So if families want to link to more information about that particular school, they can go there to get the full report. So that's one of our strategies this year, to keep it from getting too large. So that's a heavy lift right now, and Courtney will be working hard to put all that together, and then we'll send it off to the graphic designers and get those printed and out. We just selected our annual meeting date of the 25th, and we'll be working with principals. We have them tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. where we will have our monthly virtual session related to education funding and FNESU. And one of the things we're going to talk about tomorrow, we'll do some modeling together like we have been doing, and we will also be looking at ideas for what those maybe community sessions look like. I think that one thing we can all agree to is that last year, I think we had, I think in one of those budget rounds, I don't remember, it might have been after this first defeat, we were going into the second round budgets on both sides. I think we had 16 budget engagements between those two, and a really low turnout for all of those. So one of the concepts, all principals except Kevin, this will be a surprise to you, is thinking about like, do we have some other ideas about how we can get more community members to come out and engage in those conversations, and I think that we do have some ideas, and I think that we could utilize principals and getting people to come out, maybe for some presentations from kids or things like that. So the board is open to looking at those budget information meetings a little bit differently. I think that we can make them much more appealing to get more people through the door. So maybe we could highlight something like, maybe the kids come in the night we're in Sheldon and do, I'm just pulling this out of the air, and Terry Sue clearly will have something to say about that, a STEAM presentation so that they could share with the community, these are the kinds of things we're doing with our students, and if we're in Sheldon, give Terry Sue a little bit of the airtime to be able to talk about what's happening there, and then some space for us to talk. But I think to have community members come out for something like that, we might be much more successful. And we've also talked about, do we include food? Do we think about that part differently so that we could engage with our communities? So I don't know if that will become our informational sessions or if that's something we'll add in on our end, but that's where my thinking is right now. For people's thoughts on that.
I think it's a great idea.
Spaghetti dinner.
All right. So I'll go to negotiations update. So as you all know, we were in negotiations with support staff that went to impasse during the last school year. So we started this year without an agreement with our support staff. We came to agreement late in the fall. Once you come to an agreement, it takes a while to ratify. So everything was ratified right after your December meeting. So it went through all the boards, and it was fully approved and ratified, and all of in the settlement, we paid back wages to people all the way back to July 1 when that contract would have begun had we had a settlement. So all of that has been cleared up. We're good. We have an agreement between the two sides. We have entered into negotiations for next year and beyond with both teachers and with support staff, and for the first time we're negotiating both at the same time. It's certainly, from my perspective, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say from Morgan's perspective too, it's a much heavier lift to do two at once, but we've decided to have some help with our negotiation process, so we do have counsel helping us to go through that, and Morgan, I will say, has been carrying very heavy lift on that. I think we've had one session. We were supposed to have our second session last night, and that was postponed for the weather, so we didn't have that second session. I will say that thinking about both sides, I think we're much closer on the support staff side than we are on the teacher side. It's also very early in the process, and I don't think I should really go into much more detail than that, other than I'm really hopeful that we can work collaboratively to come up with a fair agreement for both sides in both of these bargaining units. Anything you want to add? Arlene or John or Mary want to add?
No, I'm optimistic, and was fortunate that the weather kind of prohibited us from meeting yesterday, but I'm sure we're getting back to figuring out the next date and moving forward, and I'm trusting we're going to come to a good place with it.
Okay, the last thing I have on my agenda today is actually a request from our partners at Northwest Access TV. So there was a funding request made and I left the data on my desk. Would you mind? It's on the left side of my desk. Yes, thank you. So Northwest Access TV, in the slideshow, there is a link for you to see. They are asking for us to consider making a contribution to the station for the work that they're doing to cover all of our board meetings. So what they've essentially requested is that they think the estimated yearly cost for covering the NMV district is $2,080. So it says their contribution would directly support the recording, staffing, post-production, and archiving of the monthly board meetings, making them available for community consumption and uploading the act of transparency that our Secretary of State proudly encourages. So they also end with, while we dream to receive the full amount necessary, we're asking each school district to see if any percentage of that contribution request could be met. So I spoke with Mary about this when we did our pre-meeting, and one of the things we talked about was how many views are we getting in these meetings and how many of our community members are we reaching? I will say, I don't know what is so exciting about our September meetings, but a lot of people watch our September meetings. Our two highest viewed meetings were in September 22, we had 2,200 views. In September 23, we had 1,100 views. Other than that, they're averaging anywhere from 50 to 200-ish views. So I'm happy to just push this around so you can see this top part is the NMV data. I'll slide that around the table. One of the things I did after our conversation, Mary, is just reached out to a couple of colleagues and said, tell me, one, I heard back from a couple, and one said they'd supported the full amount of the request, and the other, they had not chosen to support their request. So it is totally up to the board to decide if you want to build this in to your budget to support this request. I don't know if you build it into the budget or if we would pay out of this year. Yeah.
We would probably do both because we anticipate this is going to continue. We've paid $961 per year over the last 3 years.
Have we paid anything this year?
Not yet.
So I'm thinking that this 2,080 would be what we would pay for this year.
Can you say the number again? We've paid how much each year?
961.
And they're asking for,
2,080.
all right, 2,080, all right. And some schools, districts don't pay anything.
No, everybody pays something. They did not honor the request for more.
Okay. And how is Northwest normally funded?
I don't know the answer to
I imagine it's a bit of a patchwork, so municipalities and school districts, certainly for this piece of it. When they first asked us to kick in money 4 years ago, my recollection was that they were saying historically cable companies had to give a certain percentage of their budget or their profit or whatever to public access stations, and because nobody was using cable anymore, everyone was going to streaming, they were losing out completely on that revenue stream.
And
So
that's kind of what it
I think they're trying
says
to
here.
figure it out now.
Okay.
It says, due to the ongoing decline in cable subscribers with Comcast, the company federally mandated to fund public access. Northwest Access is on pace to lose 10% of its funding this year compared to last. And will struggle.
And if I can also say, they make a request of the state every year, and the state generally does give the money every year towards their base funding.
I'm just impressed with the number of people who watch. It's certainly more than we get at meetings, and
Yeah.
so it's certainly something that's valuable.
And so Lisa, you're saying that they do get some degree of funding so that it's not, the onus isn't entirely on districts to
Correct.
fund it.
That's correct. So the state provides them with some funding, and they have made a request this year to increase the funding a little bit. And they're probably making that request across the board from users of their services as well, like us in the school board. So I feel like their ask of $2,000 when we've paid just under $1,000 in the past is a pretty big jump. So they're probably trying to make up for a shortfall somewhere, and this is a creative way of making up the shortfall for sure. So I guess it's up to us to decide how much we want to fund them with.
And they did say in that last line, while it would be a dream to receive the full amount, we're asking each district to see if any percentage of that contribution request could be met.
Well, I'm fundamentally a big believer in public access television. I think it's a really important vehicle for for people to have access to. I mean, for me, $2,080 it's literally a drop in the bucket of this overall budget. I mean, yes, it's quite an increase. It would be quite an increase from what we've paid historically. I would certainly want to do at least half of that, which sounds about where we have landed in prior years. I mean, there's quite a lot of viewership. It's a little difficult to ascertain, who exactly is watching, but I have to trust those are people who are interested in what we're doing and the work we're doing, and for whatever reasons are not able to attend at the moment. They're not able to come in person, they're not able to be here in Zoom, but after the fact, they are seeking it out and watching. And I certainly value the people, the skill set of the folks doing such a good job with the filming and the production and the editing and so on and so forth. So, we're looking at a $50,000 surplus that we haven't allocated yet. We always have some, generally, always have some money left over. And I think it's a public service to support the ability to have people see what we're doing and hear what we're doing. I also don't want to seem frivolous with taxpayer dollars, so I don't quite know how to square that. But I would be comfortable with funding what they're asking, because this is not an inexpensive operation that they're trying to do.
And I say the same thing. I wouldn't have a problem with funding what they ask. It is with the numbers that shows in viewership. We're getting at least the word out through them of some of what's going on. People who aren't coming to meetings are still getting information.
I still want to know why people like September so much.
You don't
Start of the
remember?
new year,
No.
you're ready to go.
Oh, it was a contentious
But it wasn't
couple of
this year.
meetings that September of 2022.
Was it?
Yeah, they made
Was
the
it-
rounds.
Oh, was it a masking year?
Yes,
Oh, that's why they
Yes.
watched. Okay.
yes.
What year?
2022
So that's why,
September.
Mary, that 8,800 for the FNESU meeting, that makes perfect sense
Oh,
now.
yeah.
Because it ended up as a soundbite on
Oh, right.
everything.
Right. And here I
Yes,
am
now I
I'm still I'm still masking.
Right.
I'm the lone masker.
Thank you. All day I've been like, what was so exciting?
Mm.
Okay, so I heard what Mary was thinking.
I think it's a fair ask. I think we should give them the full amount for the amount of time and commitment and the exposure to people that don't get a chance. I think it's fair.
You said that too, right, Aaron?
Yeah.
I mean, we have some, we have a nonprofit organization asking for support for the work they do that supports us getting our messaging out. So I feel like the right thing to do is to fund what it costs us, because, otherwise we're asking for this kind of free service. Yes, there's state funding that comes, but I suspect that there's a lot more to pay for beyond just how they allocate for each of the district's costs. Any more discussion about funding it, the ask in full? Lisa, do you feel comfortable with that?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a worthy service. If they were to go away, we would have to provide that service to our school districts ourselves, because I think it will be mandated before long that we record everything, store it, have it available on a platform. So they do perform a very valuable service for us.
Right.
You missed Courtney's head nod, Lisa. She's hoping she doesn't have to say.
I thought you were volunteering.
No, it was a side to side.
She is very tech savvy.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it sounds as though people feel comfortable with honoring the full ask from the executive director, Paul Snyder. So I will make that, do we need to make a motion?
Yeah.
Oh, you all. Right next to you, Morgan's shaking his head no.
No.
Okay.
You choose.
Well, no, I think we're fine if we doesn't require a motion, but sounds like the board is unanimous in supporting the ask from Northwest Access.
Hopefully Northwest Access receives the message that we appreciate them. And I don't have anything else for you.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much, Lynn. All right, so we are moving on to our principal reports. And Kevin?
Yes.
You are up. If you have anything you'd like to add or highlight.
Some people call me Vern.
Also known as Vern, when you're wearing a hat and whistling.
And whistling. I have nothing other to add to my board report, other than I just always like to take this opportunity to publicly thank the teachers and the community of Bakersfield. We had a situation where a teacher resigned fairly suddenly, just before a break, and without fault of anyone's, but without a second thought, people jumped at the opportunity to support kids. And that's why we're here. And so I just want to thank them, and I thank them enough, but I want to their faces, but I also want to thank them to you all, just recognizing the hard work that they put in towards our direction of ensuring that all kids are learning at high levels. And it's been a great ride thus far since August, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the year and next year, maybe. I haven't seen a contract, so I assume.
Soon.
Great, thanks so much, Kevin. That's wonderful. Gavin.
So one of the things I'd like to just add on a little bit onto is under academic proficiency. As everyone in the room is aware, this is the next round of benchmark testing on our assessment calendar for math and for literacy. This past week has been the week where our school agreed that we would do our STAR testing. And so the next shift will be doing data diving, basically coming together as different cohorts to look at the progress of the students. One piece of very, very encouraging information I'd like to share with the board is already the initial data is showing, if not increased proficiency, a large number of students are moving up in proficiency. So with the testing, it's categorized into basically falling far below or needing urgent intervention, approaching mastery, proficiency, and then essentially exceeding proficiency. proficiency. And so we've seen a number of kids moving up in category, and that's not an easy feat. It takes a number, I mean, generally there has to be a pretty significant growth to be able to jump from one category to the next, and we are seeing that movement, which is incredibly encouraging, and I'm incredibly proud and happy for the teachers as well, because sometimes in education, as everyone in the room is aware, it's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and sometimes you don't see that immediate payoff. And I think at least our initial view is that this is, I think, a tremendous validation of our efforts, and knowing that we are moving the needle, even if we don't see it day by day, over time we see it.
Is that across the continuum of grade levels, Gavin?
Yes.
Through the middle school as well?
Middle school, as of right now, in math, yes. In ELA, our ELA teacher for middle school is going to do the test tomorrow.
Okay. I was asking because that's where the split is for the new literacy programs, and I'm hearing a lot of principals talking in this way, which I'm very excited about.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that actually has been something that our teachers have shared as well. Is they feel that the shift from units of study to MyView, our new K-5 literacy, a lot of teachers who were here, our ELA teacher wasn't here last year, so she wouldn't be able to compare and amplify at the middle school level, but a lot of our K-5 teachers are saying that they're seeing a huge payoff also with the new curriculum as well, in a way that it's structured, in a way that it's really targeting those core skills.
Fantastic.
Oh, and one other piece also is I am happy to say that last month we were able to onboard our new school nurse as well, Brad Gadry, who has already made a huge impact on the community.
Great. So, thanks, Gavin. It's wonderful. Thank you so much. Sandy.
Happy New Year.
I would just like to call attention to in upcoming events. I have our One School, Three Books literacy event listed. It says Wednesday, the 16th. It's actually Thursday, the 16th. But if anyone is interested, it's a great event. It's a Title I event for literacy, where we hand out books to all students, so that it's kind of an invite for families to read. So families come in, they have pizza, we introduce the books, give them out to all students, separate them between the two books and read the first chapter, send homework home for families over the next 2 weeks. And then there are trivia questions for students at school to win prizes. So it's a great event that we've been hosting for many years. It started before I came, and hopefully it'll be well attended next Thursday. But if anyone would like to join us to see how it works, it starts at 5 o'clock.
What time, Sandy?
5 o'clock, 5 to 6:30.
Great. Thanks so much, Sandy. Terry Sue.
Okay, so I just want to quickly share an email I got today, kind of piggybacking off of Gavin, he beat me to it. It's about the STAR testing today, and it's focused on our board goal of proficiency by the end of third grade. And it was for my third grade team. They did their reading STAR testing today, and we have 36 third graders currently at Sheldon. I'm going to give you the results and then read the email. So right now, from fall to winter, our average grade level growth for all 36 students, the average growth is 1.1 grade levels in 4.5 school months. So they've already done more than a year's worth of growth. The range of grade levels that the students qualified at are from first grade up through above 10th grade. It tops out at the 10th grade level for third graders when they take the reading test. So we have some that are reading that high, and it's more than one. In the fall, we had 20 out of the 36 that were not proficient yet on reading. Right now, we only have 9 that are not proficient at the third grade level in the middle of the year, by the middle of the year. Of those 9, only 3 are below the grade level of 2.9, so the end of second grade level. 6 of those that were not yet proficient are between a 2.9, the end of a second grade year and the beginning of a third grade year level, so they're almost on pace. So here's the email I got from my team today after they finished testing. Hi Terry Sue, I wanted to let you know that both third grade classes did their STAR reading test today, aside from a couple that were absent. across the board, we're seeing huge growth, which is so exciting. And I really think we can safely give a good share of the credit to the new MyView curriculum. MyView is a highly rigorous curriculum, and the learning curve for students and staff was and remains to be pretty significant, but I think it's already paying dividends. Our students are approaching the high expectations that come with the curriculum with tenacity and patience. It's been slow going, but I don't think the pace we're going has been detrimental. Students are able to wade into this new learning without feeling overwhelmed or pressured to rush. As the saying goes, the proof is in the pudding, and the pudding our students made today was pretty darn delicious. I've also add that we have seen good growth with our mid-year spelling and sight word inventories. Again, I think MyView has contributed to this quite a bit. I am so excited to see what things look like when the final round of testing comes around this spring. They are actually, I've never, like both of them were going in this a little bit scared, I know. And now they're saying, I think we actually can hit 100% by the end of the year. And I can tell you what, last spring, when all this discussion was happening, and I kept saying, how can we get to 100% by the end of third grade? Let's look at 5 years. And now I hear my third grade teachers saying, we can do this year. So I just want to say, yay.
That's fantastic.
It just made my day getting that email at the end of the day to me. So
It's my heart
that's
happy
what
to hear all of that.
Doing a good job.
they're doing, well,
You are doing a good job.
Thank you.
Pointing the direction. You did a great job.
thank you. But the students are doing a lot of the work. My interventionists have been super, helpful in this, and my teachers are just, these are the teachers who are bought into it and are like, it's a new curriculum, yeah, let's try it. So fearless. It's so good.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Great. All right, so moving forward to board business. So we need to look at the calendar, to find a time after Enosburg sets its high school tuition to have a meeting.
So we have an SU meeting on Wednesday, is that correct?
Yeah, Wednesday the
Yeah.
15th,
Do
yeah.
you want to do it just before that, and then folks who are coming anyway for the SU meeting can come, and then,
Yeah, that would be,
Those are
I mean, that
not-
certainly works for me. I will be coming in here regardless for the SU.
When is this?
This
What's
would
the date?
be Wednesday the 15th. Morgan, what do you think, an hour at 5?
half hour.
Half hour tops? So 5:30 next Wednesday. We would need a quorum for this because we're gonna have to vote on a budget number.
So it would be here, you said?
Well, everyone could
We do
join by
virtual.
Zoom
If you don't have to come for the
if
SU
you're not
meeting.
coming for the SU
Oh,
meeting.
okay, cool.
So, yeah, assuming Munisburg warns a budget and sets the tuition rate that night, I would get a revised budget out to you by email in the morning.
Yeah,
So look for that, and then we can get together at 5:30.
okay.
And
Well, hold on, let's make sure, Miranda, would that work for you?
Checking five
Via
different
Zoom?
schedules right now.
How about you all?
Yeah.
You could make it work?
Yeah.
Okay, and Zoom again is fine.
But it's not Zoom anymore, right?
Or,
No, it's
oh, Google Meet, sorry.
Google Meet,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. How about you, Lisa?
It's debatable. I can't give you an affirmative answer. I mean, I have on my calendar that I'll zoom into the policy meeting, and then hopefully I can just continue on to join you for this special meeting.
Okay. Okay, and we don't have Emily here, so, but it sounds like you three are a yes, I'm a yes, so we need one more person to have a quorum.
Let's tentatively schedule it for that. and then
Okay.
we'll come back to you if
Okay.
we need to.
And check in with Zach.
And we'll just get a link, right? Another,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, perfect, that sounds great. And so, Morgan, Lynn, did we want to try to set all the rest of those meetings now, or
I
we're
don't think
good?
so. If we could wait, I wanna do some work with the principals first.
Sure.
And then I think we'll have time.
Okay,
If the I might do that electronically, is to just send something
Sure.
out with the board, because we don't need all board members at all of
Right.
those. So I don't think that we need to necessarily do all of that here if we make sure that people can attend, certainly at least the meetings in their community and
Sure.
others if they could.
That makes sense, okay.
Yeah.
That sounds great, okay. Obviously, we've got that special meeting that we just scheduled, and then the next regular scheduled meeting will be February 5th, again here at the central office. And anything else, am I overlooking anything? Morgan, you're gonna give paperwork to Michelle, to Zach, to an extra sheet for me to pass around tonight. Great, any other discussion, questions from anyone? Okay, I will make a motion to adjourn then, and everyone drive safely home, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you all so much.